everybody. Welcome to the Covert Report with Susan Lindauer. Today, my guest is Chip Tatum, and we have a great show for you. Chip Tatum is a very famous CIA cowboy. Could pretty much say the movie Rambo was based on his life, on his actual experiences. He was one of the pilots flying cocaine into Mena, Arkansas, collected tapes, audio tapes mostly. I don't know if any videotapes, he'll clarify that in a minute, but audio tapes of his conversations with people like Bill Clinton, George Bush. He was part of the Pegasus assassination team, the internal affairs control of the CIA, and he has fascinating life. When he refused a direct order to assassinate Ross Perot, parting company with George Bush Sr., he let everybody know that he had his tapes of the conversations with various high-ranking officials in this government, and he said, I'm going my own separate way. And they didn't like that very much. They decided that he had too much information. They wanted to catch him and stop him from making any disclosures. He ended up in prison. This is just an extraordinary story. Chip Tatum, have I given a direct summary of your work, of your life, with any degree of accuracy, I hope?
Yeah, I would correct one point in it. We weren't ordered in Pegasus to assassinate Ross Perot, only to neutralize him, and we could do that through intimidation. And I might add that the same mode of operation is being used right now against Trump. His family was just received several modes of intimidation to try to get Trump to leave. So the cabal with Bush and the boys, their attitude is if it ain't broken, don't fix it. And as far as videotapes, I wish we'd had the technology back then that we have now, because videotapes would be great. I do have several, more than several audio tapes of conversations, and we've included those audios with videos and videos showing the signed documents that we were given for the assassinations and so forth.
But you're saying that this is very much what is being used on Trump right now.
Certainly is.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that in more detail. Give the background on that order against Ross Perot.
Well, Perot and Bush had been enemies forever and ever, for a very long time. Bush was fed up with Perot, and Perot, naturally running as an independent, was pulling votes from him. He wanted him out. He wanted him out now. And in our meeting in Jupiter Island, he tasked the teams were led. The OSGs were led by military officers. You had North running one side. I was running one side, and an ex-general was running one side. So we were receiving taskings depending on our talents for various operations. One of those operations was to get Perot off the ballot, out of the race, so that he wasn't pulling all those votes from Bush. My criteria in working with the OSGs was, okay, I'll accept this and I'll do this, but never within the boundaries of the United States and against U.S. citizens. And they go, sure, fine. They started giving us several operations within the boundaries of the United States, and I would turn them down every time. When he turned to me and I said, I'm not going to do this, he said, bullshit, you aren't. I told you you're going to do it. You get out there and you do it. And that's when I stood up. I pulled out my briefcase. I got my little VCR tape that I'd made with my insurance policy, dropped it on the desk, and walked out of the Jupiter Island meeting. Although I did not accept that tasking, one of the other commanders did, and it's history. They intimidated Ross Perot by using his daughter and her wedding coming up. No doubt that they talked to Trump first and told him, if you don't get out, we're going to start coming after your family. So that's just the beginning. Those entities, if that doesn't scare them out, then they'll take it up a level. The Bushes are involved. They have Neil Bush now as their front man standing out there in front of everything. The same Neil Bush that met with Hinckley the night or a couple days before Hinckley shot Reagan. So,
wow, that's right.
Yeah, that's
that
right.
Neil Bush is another bad guy. The whole Bush family are just there. It's like a crime syndicate.
When I was in New Hampshire, I'd taken 5,000 excerpts from the Tatum Chronicles. with me, and a translation, a transcript of the conversation in the back of my aircraft in Honduras, where two of Clinton and Bush's men were sitting in the back talking back and forth, said that there were some monies missing and they were going to take care of things to go after the people, speaking of Barry Seal, and that they'd have Jeb handle it out of Colombia. So Jeb's dead in the middle of it, and I passed out 5,000 of those in New Hampshire.
Well, and let's be clear, you were charged with treason because you exposed Iran-Contra.
Yes, among other things, and because I walked. You know, you just don't walk away from black operations, and I knew that. But, you know,
Yep.
you just get to a point where you have to say enough is enough and do what you're going to do, because that's it. I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm not with you anymore. What you're doing, I realize what you're doing is not in the best interest of the United States. It's in your own best interest and has nothing to do with our national security and has everything to do with your pocketbooks.
Yeah, and this was generating private revenues for the elite political families.
Sure, and for black operations too. But you know, in '76, Congress pulled funding from black operations and said any funding has to come. You know, black ops monies didn't have to be reported through Congress. They would just pull it from different budgets for black ops. The CIA could, or DIA. And in '76, Congress changed that, and all black ops, all operations, intelligence operations, had to be approved and funded through Congress. Well, Congress can't keep a damn secret. How can you even expect them to keep a secret when you ask for money to go do a black operation? So they decided to start making their own money. Well, they'd already been making their own money. If you look at Air America and the heroin, we were flying down there. But so they just continued in doing it and continue it up through today. Look, you people think that Afghanistan we need to be there. You're wrong. We need to be there. And the only thing our soldiers are doing are standing and guarding the poppy fields and the bad guys' little businesses over there. Our soldiers have orders not to interfere with the warlords and their businesses, whether it be child prostitution, human trafficking, the heroin production. We are not to interfere with any of that. Because of that, heroin use in the United States has grown exponentially, over 1,000%. And why? Because it's funding the cabals and black operations. Look, these cabals, these evil people, power. They're just hungry for power, and they can never get enough power. And they equate power with how much money they have, and you know they'll go against one another just to grow that power. I know. We ran several missions against politicians who were part of the cabal, who were part of the enterprise, taking them down so that others could grow. Let me give you an example. Something we did during Honduras, during the Iran-Contra conflict in Nicaragua. There we were in Nicaragua. Ortega was there, and he was the democratically elected president. However, he wanted to nationalize bananas, basically, is what it came down to. And you had Del Monte, you had all these huge U.S. corporations there that needed protection, and so we decided we were going to take Ortega out, and so we formed Contra camps and brought in all these ex-Somosan thugs, promising them monies, promising them everything if they'd go and training and arms if they'd form a rebellion against Daniel Ortega in Nicaragua. We based that out of Honduras, and that was part of the Iran-Contra thing. Part of what we did is we traded off, under North, he had the great idea, and we traded off guns for drugs. We were able to get, for every M16 and 1,000 rounds of ammunition, we'd get a kilo of cocaine. So, and we would ship that back to the United States. Barry Seal was one of the primary shippers. Well documented. So here we have this big conflict going on in Honduras, and Ortega, you know, the thugs just we really didn't want to win there because it was too lucrative for them to have their guns for drugs trade-off going on and getting the cocaine back here. But it came to a point where when Hassan Foss, his aircraft crashed, the violation of the Boland Act came into play, and was public knowledge to Congress that we had to do something to finally end it. So what they decided to do is they brought in Pegasus. We went to Ortega. We told Ortega, okay, it's time for you to leave office and hold elections. He said, no, I'm not going to do it. So the message was given to him: you're going to hold elections or else. And so we gave him 2 weeks, and he just ignored it. He said, yeah, what are you going to do? So we went back and we said, okay, this is your cousin. We showed him a picture of Raphael, his cousin, and said, your cousin's going to die in 2 weeks if you don't announce elections. And he said, okay, yeah, sure. Didn't believe us. So what he did is he put a battalion. He put him in El Ocotal, a battalion military base, and protected him with a whole battalion of military. 2 weeks to the day, 2 missiles were shot from a Loach helicopter, U.S. Loach helicopter, based out of Honduras and El Salvador, were shot into that compound, killing Raphael.
Wow.
A week later, Ortega was approached and told, now, you're next. There's nothing you can do to protect yourself. We will get you. And 2 weeks later, he announced elections. So what can they do to Trump? Sky's the limit, dear. The cabal has absolutely no qualms about killing family members, killing children, killing whoever they want to get their way. So, and they have very, very well trained operatives. You've met some of them.
Oh yeah, I do. They're ferocious operatives. I mean,
and they're unknown. They're wandering assets in every country in the world. We have wandering assets sitting there, well trained, well funded, just waiting to get into the game. So
that's right. Wow. Well, but to take down a presidential candidate, that requires a little bit. Like you said, they went after his son. Sending the white powder to his son. I just, he's had so many wives. I think that he is pretty much a Teflon candidate in the sense that he is not afraid. You originally said that if it was a Jeb Bush Hillary Clinton battle, that you would release even more of those tapes publicly. Have you reconsidered? Because you have a lot of stuff on the Clintons too. Both of them, both the Bushes and the Clintons. It would have been a very eye-opening public debate.
I've just gotten started on Clinton. There's a thing called the HP 9250, which is the equipment that they use to classify emails and faxes and so forth in the Department of State and in other departments in intelligence community. As an email is written, it comes to the operator of the 9250, and they go through that and they classify it at what level it needs to be classified, and then they shoot it out. Well, she was bypassing that in many aspects, but in many aspects it would come through that and then go to her personal email also from her orders as classified documents. So she was receiving classified documents, and you know how I know that? Because I have 3 of the 9250s from the State Department with me here right now. I bought them in a GSA auction, and they forgot to wipe the hard drives.
Oh, seriously?
Yes, ma'am.
They forgot to wipe the hard drives? Damn.
Mm-hmm.
That was idiotic. From the State Department?
Yes, ma'am.
You are an amazing. It's like once you're in the CIA, man, it just always happens. But don't you think that maybe somebody was sending you a message, like they kind of figured out who had bought the computers, and they're like, hey, want to see this shit? Because you have clearances. I mean, you do have clearances.
I have no doubt that's what
but you have a background, and anybody who knows who you are, who was, oh, the Chip Tatum got this stuff. Well, and then they're sharing it with you.
Yeah, and probably hoping that I could get caught with it in my hands in the States. That's why I got it out of there real quick.
Oh, okay. So you would get in trouble if you possessed it.
Yeah, I'd have classified information in my possession.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
But it's not your fault that you got it.
Nope, I reported it, and I reported it to DHS, and they said, okay, never came out and got it.
Somebody
Imagine I want
wanted
it
you to
now,
have it.
but
Somebody wanted you to have it. You wouldn't have it unless they wanted you to have it.
well, and they didn't come out to get it, so that was the message I got.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's cool. Tell everybody about your current operation. I know this is sort of a segue away from it from our conversation for a moment, but you guys have got to hear this. This is so totally cool.
Well, I've owned some farms down in Colombia for a while. A farm in Colombia for a while, and last August,
1,000 acres, people.
well, 200 hectares initially, and in August of last year, I bought an additional 200 hectares. A hectare is 2.5 acres, so it ended up being a total of 1,000 acres. And on the first 1,000 acres, we're running cattle, coffee, plantanos, and fruits. And we also had, well, the cattle of Brahmas. And I decided, down here they have a real problem with cholesterol because they eat so much beef and red meat. So I talked to a friend in Colorado, and we got some buffalo sperm, American buffalo sperm, brought it down to inseminate some of our Brahma heifers to make a beefalo, a low in cholesterol meat. It was a photo opportunity for the Minister of Agriculture here because you have to have permission to do that down here. So we got permission. He came in, did a photo op, and he pulled me aside. He said, that 200 acres you just bought from us? I said, yep. Or those 200 hectares? I said, yep. He said, those were owned by a infamous drug cartel, and they grew marijuana on it, and he's doing 25 years in U.S. prisons right now. I said, wow.
Okay.
And he said, but let me tell you, in December of this year, and this was in August, or in September, because we started inseminating in September. He said, in December of this year, the president's going to sign an order allowing medical marijuana in Colombia. I said, really? He said, yep. And we want you to use that other farm for that, and we'll assist you in that. And so I said, you think about it. And I thought about it a couple of days, and I called him back and I said, okay, but here's the funny part of this. Here this guy is doing 25 years for doing what they want me to do now legally.
He's doing 25 years in prison for doing it.
For growing marijuana on that farm. And now they've legalized it, and they want me to grow marijuana on that farm. They said that he grew some of the best stuff in the country and very high grade. And so what we did is we formed a pharmaceutical company called Valley Medical Group. It's valleymedgroup.com. We formed it. We're currently building laboratories for research and development, and actually producing pharmaceutical grade marijuanas in not dry. It's in oils, and we're able to separate the different components, the different from chemicals in the marijuana, so that we can evaluate each of the chemicals. There's over 200 chemicals in marijuana, so we evaluate and we can recombine to treat certain things like PTSD. Listen, cancer. It's a huge anti-angiogenesis component that actually stops the blood flow to new fast-growing cells, which are cancer cells. So it has that effect, and
it stops the growth. It stops the growth rate of the tumor.
Right, it'll stop and actually end up the tumor ends up dying and committing suicide because it has no blood flow. And they found that out last year. The feds did, and it's even an NIH study, National Institute of Health study, talking about it. They've only studied it in rats, but that's where they start in mice. So we'll be following up on that.
That's amazing.
He wanted him out. He wanted him out now. And in our meeting in Jupiter Island, he tasked the teams were led. The OSGs were led by military officers. You had North running one side, I was running one side, and an ex-general was running one side. So we were receiving taskings depending on our talents for various operations. One of those operations was to get Perot off the ballot, out of the race, so that he wasn't pulling all those votes from Bush. My criteria in working with the OSGs was, okay, I'll accept this and I'll do this. But never videotapes would be great. I do have several. more than several audio tapes of conversations, and we've included those audios with videos and videos showing the signed documents that we were given for the assassinations and so forth.
But you're saying that this is very much what is being used on Trump right now.
Certainly is.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that in more detail. Give the background on that order against Ross Perot.
Well, Perot and Bush had been enemies forever and ever, for a very long time. Bush was fed up with Perot, and Perot, naturally running as an independent, was pulling votes from him. He wanted him out.
Of the CIA, and he has fascinating life. When he refused a direct order to assassinate Ross Perot, parting company with George Bush Sr., he let everybody know that he had his tapes of the conversations with various high-ranking officials in this government, and he said, I'm going my own separate way. And they didn't like that very much. They decided that he had too much information. They wanted to catch him and stop him from making any disclosures. He ended up in prison. This is just an extraordinary story. Chip Tatum, have I given a direct summary of your work, of your life, with any degree of accuracy, I hope?
Yeah, I would correct one point in it. We weren't ordered in Pegasus to assassinate Ross Perot, only to neutralize him, and we could do that through intimidation. And I might add that the same mode of operation is being used right now against Trump. His family was just received several modes of intimidation to try to get Trump to leave. So the cabal with Bush and the boys, their attitude is if it ain't broken, don't fix it. And as far as videotapes, I wish we'd had the technology back then that we have now, because...
Hey everybody, welcome to the Covert Report with Susan Lindauer. Today my guest is Chip Tatum, and we have a great show for you. Chip Tatum is a very famous CIA cowboy. Could pretty much say the movie Rambo was based on his life, on his actual experiences. He was one of the pilots flying cocaine into Mena, Arkansas, collected tapes, audio tapes mostly. I don't know if any videotapes, he'll clarify that in a minute, but audio tapes of his conversations with people like Bill Clinton, George Bush. He was part of the Pegasus assassination team, the internal affairs control